When I previewed Yooka-Laylee a few weeks ago, I walked away feeling very optimistic about the 2-hour slice of the game I had played. My initially brief time with the game suggested that Yooka-Laylee would be the real deal, a genuine revival of the 3D platformer genre in the style of the much-loved Banjo-Kazooie, both confident and polished. Well, turns out it's one of those things. Look, let me be very clear. Yooka-Laylee absolutely does walk and talk like a Banjo-Kazooie game. It's all there just as you remember it. The entertaining 3D platforming, the explorable hub area connecting each main world, the myriad collectibles to find, the nonsensical voices that are either endearing or obnoxious depending on the listener, the cheeky, fourth wall-breaking British humor. Simply put, Yooka-Laylee is incredibly confident in its ability to be another Banjo-Kazooie, and it succeeds in that endeavor, but only to a point. See, Banjo-Kazooie and its sequel, Banjo-Tooie, both had the polish to back up their vision. Quite frankly, Yooka-Laylee does not, at least not on Xbox One, the platform I played the game on for this review. Normally I talk about a game's graphics and technical performance toward the end of a review, as I usually find those elements to be less important to the overall package. But in Yooka-Laylee, the game's visual presentation takes center stage, and not in a good way. In my preview, I said Yooka-Laylee runs at a smooth 60 frames per second and looks elegant in general. That's all true if you're playing it on PC and presumably have a decent setup. On Xbox One, the game's overall visual quality takes a modest hit and the frame rate is cut in half to 30 frames per second. Now, I'd probably be okay with these downgrades if they were carried out in the name of stability, but there's literally nothing stable about Yooka-Laylee on Xbox One. Stuttering, slowdown, and frame drops are ubiquitous in the Xbox One version of Yooka-Laylee. Performance is a constant issue here, and there's often no discernible reason why. The game often stutters and experiences hiccups even when you're doing little more than swinging the camera around or collecting a pagey, and in the worst case scenarios, these hiccups actually impact the gameplay, with sudden bouts of choppiness causing me to mistime a jump or an attack. But Yooka-Laylee's problems with performance and lack of polish don't end there, and they're not necessarily exclusive to the Xbox One version of the game either. The camera, for example, serves as a constant and painful reminder that some elements from the Nintendo 64 era should have stayed there, with the camera regularly getting hung up on walls and forcing sudden perspective changes that threw my game off. I even encountered one particularly nasty glitch that gave me credit for finishing a quest I wasn't even working on while simultaneously removing all the floors and walls from the world I was in, and my only recourse was to exit the world from the pause menu and re-enter it. It wasn't anything game-ruining, but when a major glitch like this happens on top of all the countless minor technical problems that add up over the course of the game, the frustration really begins to build. And it is frustrating, because for all of Yooka-Laylee's technical problems, there's a good game here, a charming one even. For as janky as Yooka-Laylee often is, the moment-to-moment gameplay is fun more often than it isn't, and the game generally does deliver the Banjo-Kazooie-inspired experience that was promised to backers when Yooka-Laylee was still finding its feet as a Kickstarter project. That said, it's not a one-for-one likeness. The Banjo games' mostly linear progression and nearly 10 worlds each have been traded in for a more open-ended adventure through 5 much larger worlds here in Yooka-Laylee, and those 5 worlds can eventually be expanded, introducing new areas, challenges, characters, and collectibles to find in each. In this way, Playtonic have enabled players to forge their own journey through Yooka-Laylee. Instead of Jiggies acting as borders to progression in Banjo-Kazooie, Pages work in the opposite way by enabling progression according to the player's choices. For example, players can use their collected pages to either unlock a new world or expand one they've already found, and quills, which replace Banjo-Kazooie's notes, can be spent to buy new moves in whatever order you choose, with the moves you've learned determining the progress you can make. It's an interesting approach, one that seems to hew more closely to Banjo-Tooie's larger and more open-ended design philosophy than anything seen in the original Banjo-Kazooie. Fortunately, Playtonic seem to have recognized this and thrown a bone to both audiences in their approach to designing Yooka-Laylee's worlds. While the first and second worlds are larger and more open in nature, the third and fifth worlds harken back to the Banjo-Kazooie style of having slices of a larger world sectioned off into their own easily digestible chunks. The fourth world, meanwhile, aims for something of a middle ground between the two extremes. While I generally prefer the original Banjo-Kazooie's smaller, more numerous worlds and linear overall structure, Playtonic's broad approach here ensures that fans in both camps are taken care of. But no matter which approach you prefer, you'll probably agree that the worlds are just big enough to feel slightly empty. While there's plenty to do and tons of lovably weird NPCs to meet in each world, there's often so much ground to cover between them that enemies can feel sparse, and I found myself wishing I could get from place to place a little faster. But that particular complaint is ultimately a minor one for me, because when you get down to brass tacks, the base gameplay and platforming in Yooka-Laylee are solid, and the titular buddy duo is fun to play. The controls are responsive, and even the rolling move, which Banjo fans will recognize as Yooka-Laylee's version of the Talon Trot, feels just right and is a fun way to get around. It's a slight shame then that Yooka-Laylee's repertoire of moves is a bit more limited, both in number and in scope, than the abilities Banjo and Kazooie had back in the day. Without venturing too far into spoiler territory, I'll just say that while you'll have learned a decent number of fun movement and attack maneuvers by the end of the game, the last two worlds only introduce one new move each, and I was left feeling slightly underwhelmed by my attack options at the end of the game. In my preview, I mentioned that Yooka-Laylee's gameplay starts to suffer when it tries to venture outside of its core purpose of being a nostalgia-fueled 3D platformer. Unfortunately, I still agree with that statement after finishing the full game. For as fun as Yooka-Laylee often is, there are two characters whose dumb faces you will learn to hate over the course of the game: Kartos and Rextro. Whether it's Kartos' minecart challenges or Rextro's arcade-style minigames you're dealing with, both do their very best to bring Yooka-Laylee's otherwise entertaining momentum to a crashing halt. On Xbox One at least, these sequences are dogged by unresponsive controls, unpredictable physics, and exceptionally subpar technical performance. Full stop and across the board, Yooka-Laylee would be a stronger, better overall game without Kartos and Rextro in it, or at least their challenges. Like most good character-driven platformers, Yooka-Laylee has boss fights, but sadly, there's something of a mixed bag. While a number of them, including the final boss, are fun, engaging affairs that test your utility with the pair's various moves, the others are forgettable at best, and one fight in particular is hamstrung by significant performance and camera issues, at least on Xbox One. The stronger boss fights do stand out as some of Yooka-Laylee's best moments, though. Animal and vehicle transformations make a triumphant return from the Banjo games, this time by way of a character named Dr. Puzz and her DN Ray mechanism. Each world has its own unique transformation, and while I don't want to spoil them all here, I'll say that they range from entertaining to slightly obnoxious. They don't have a huge effect on the game either way though, and you're likely to forget about the transformations soon after you've collected the pages associated with them. The same can be said for the brilliantly named Playtonics, which are perks you can unlock to make the game slightly easier in various ways. For example, one Playtonic lets you breathe underwater longer, while others give you extra health, make your stamina recharge faster, help you find hidden collectibles, and more. You can only have one Playtonic active at a time, but if you're anything like me, you'll quickly gravitate toward 2 or 3 particularly useful ones and switch between those for the duration of the game. In that sense, Playtonics don't take away from the game, but their implementation feels slightly half-baked. To reiterate, for all of the technical and other issues I've mentioned thus far, Yooka-Laylee really does nail that Banjo vibe in terms of its characters, story, and overall world. While Yooka and Laylee themselves won't have anyone forgetting about Banjo and Kazooie anytime soon, or ever, they're charming in their own right and carry their roles well, perhaps because they're not all that different from the bear and bird that inspired them. Yooka is basically a smarter, more proactive Banjo, and Laylee is essentially Kazooie. No qualifiers there, Laylee is just a bat-shaped Kazooie. And while primary antagonist Capital B was likely never going to usurp Gruntilda in Banjo fans' hearts, I have to say I generally enjoyed his presence throughout the game. He compares more favorably to Grunty than I thought he would. I also had a great time discovering the rest of Yooka-Laylee's bizarre cast of googly-eyed, mumbly-voiced characters as I played through the game, and it must be said that Playtonic absolutely nailed this part of the presentation. From the moment you begin the game, Yooka-Laylee hits you right in the nostalgia bone and never lets up. The one exception to this element of nostalgia lies in Yooka-Laylee's soundtrack. Returning Banjo-Kazooie composer Grant Kirkhope has done some good work here, but it's perhaps not the kind of work Banjo fans were expecting. Rather than the music taking center stage with the kind of strong, hooky melody lines the Banjo soundtracks are known for, Kirkhope has taken more of an ambient film score style approach here in Yooka-Laylee, with a subtler soundtrack whose songs unfold more gradually. It took me a little while to warm up to, but once I got over my initial expectation of another Banjo-styled soundtrack, I came to really enjoy Yooka-Laylee's music in its own right. Meanwhile, fellow Rareware alumnus David Wise brings up the rear with some great music for the game's minecart challenges, minigames, and other such sequences. While it's noticeably different in tone from Kirkhope's work, it's excellent all the same, but as you might expect, it deserves much better than the poor gameplay sequences it got paired with. I know I've been pretty tough on Yooka-Laylee in this review, and make no mistake, the technical and performance problems in the Xbox One version are every bit as severe as I've made them out to be. But just as importantly, I've enjoyed my time with the game moment to moment, and the Banjo-Kazooie fan in me is satisfied with Yooka-Laylee as a whole. Technical problems be damned. Put more simply, I liked it. But that rating comes with a huge asterisk, and that asterisk is the incredible amount of technical jankiness there is to deal with. If you can put up with that, as I could, then there's a good game to discover here. But if you're sensitive to frame drops and other performance problems and don't like it when a game clearly hasn't been optimized for the hardware it's on, I can't stress enough that you should not play Yooka-Laylee on Xbox One. While Playtonic have assured us that a performance patch is coming for Xbox One and PlayStation 4, it's unclear when exactly that patch will arrive, and from what we've been told, that patch will address specific bugs but not the common performance issues present throughout the whole game. So while I do recommend Yooka-Laylee, I do so cautiously, and not on Xbox One, unless and until the performance problems have been addressed. As always, thank you for watching, and if you enjoyed this review, please hit that like button, subscribe to our channel, and follow us on social media. You can find all the relevant links in the video description below. Otherwise, keep it on GameXplain for more on Yooka-Laylee and all things gaming.